Alright, so Emma Watson, the wizard from Harry Potter, came out with a pretty based pro-Palestinian post on Instagram earlier this week, and it absolutely blew up. Now, it blew up for a couple of different reasons. Number one, because again, it was absolutely based and correct, but reason number two is she was actually called an anti-Semite by actual representatives of the government of Israel for posting in solidarity with Palestinians. So this is just a completely ridiculous story, but unfortunately, it's nowhere close to being the first time that we have seen this type of weaponization of the word anti-Semitism against people who are simply trying to speak out against the actions of the government of Israel, which is a very important distinction that you got to understand, okay? There's a very big difference between critiquing the actions of an actual government, like the state of Israel, versus critiquing the entire Jewish people, okay? Completely different things. It would be as ridiculous as saying that it is Islamophobic for me to come out and criticize Saudi Arabia's actions against the people in Yemen, okay? It's not anti-Semitic to criticize a government, okay? But here are some of the details. They say from CNN, Emma Watson's pro-Palestinian Instagram post sparks anti-Semitism spat. And they say that a pro-Palestinian Instagram post from Hollywood star Emma Watson has sparked accusations of anti-Semitism from Israeli politicians and a backlash against what many are calling the cynical weaponization of the term to attack supporters of the Palestinian cause. And they say on Monday, Watson, who shot to global superstardom after playing, obviously, Hermione in the Harry Potter films, posted an image of a pro-Palestinian rally overlaid with the words, "Solidarity is a verb," with a quotation from academic Sarah Ahmed on the meaning of solidarity in the caption. And by Wednesday, the post had attracted more than 1.2 million likes, which I guess that's not surprising. She has like 65 million followers here, but also comments that were split between those supporting Watson and those criticizing her stance. So let's just go ahead and take a look at the post, okay? Because this is just completely like lukewarm shit here. There is absolutely nothing aggro about this in any way, shape, or form. So here it is, okay? It literally just says solidarity is a verb, and obviously by verb, meaning taking action on something, she means going out and, in this case, I guess, joining protests or doing what you can to try to advocate for the liberation of the Palestinian people. So there's nothing crazy here. There's no call to violence or anything remotely close to that. It's literally just saying, I mean, you have the picture there in the background, okay? You don't have to do too much like interpreting here. It's pretty much at face value exactly what it says. But she also posted this quote down here, which is, again, a very lukewarm quote that I think any decent human being would agree with. But it says, "Solidarity does not assume that our struggles are the same struggles, or that our pain is the same pain, or that our hope is for the same future. Solidarity involves commitment and work, as well as the recognition that even if we do not have the same feelings or the same lives or the same bodies, we do live on common ground." So again, just like very basic shit here, okay? Nothing crazy, nothing radical, just advocating for solidarity, okay? Awesome stuff. But of course, representatives of the government of Israel, in this case, we have two different, one former and one current UN ambassador. So, this is literally who the state of Israel is choosing to nominate as their representative to the world stage. Okay, so this is pretty important here. It's not just some random fringe Israeli politicians that are calling her anti-Semitic for this post. It's actually like the people who they chose to represent them in the biggest way possible. So I think that this guy is the current, this is the current ambassador, and then we have another one from a former ambassador, but this one, the current one, he said, "Fiction may work in Harry Potter, but it does not work in reality. If it did, the magic used in the wizarding world could eliminate the evils of Hamas, which oppresses women and seeks the annihilation of Israel, and the Palestinian Authority, which supports terror. I would be in favor of that." So again, don't know where the fuck, and I'm not going to get into the differences between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority or any of the actions that they have taken, okay? It is absolutely laughably ridiculous for a representative of the government of Israel to be criticizing another body for oppression or for crimes against humanity, okay? Israel is committing widespread human rights abuses, war crimes, and has an ongoing apartheid against the Palestinian people right now, which we're about to get into here in a second. So just at face value, it's laughable that somebody who represents the government of Israel would be critiquing somebody else on those lines. But on top of that, just what is he even getting that from? I mean, literally, we saw the post. All the post says is solidarity is a verb, go out, stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, show up to protest, do what you can, be an advocate, whatever, just very basic, mild shit here, right? But of course, he says this and starts conflating it immediately with supporting terrorism and shit like that. So just completely ridiculous shit here, an absolutely absurd right-wing reactionary response to something like this. But it shows you how like thin-skinned they actually are and how terrified they are of real criticisms of their own actions. But here is the former ambassador to the UN. He had to say 10 points from Gryffindor for being an anti-Semite. So again, apparently it means that you are anti-Semitic if you have critiques of the government of Israel. It's just, again, completely ridiculous. I'll use the analogy again just to hammer it home. It's as ridiculous as saying that it is Islamophobic to criticize the actions of the government of Saudi Arabia, okay? It's just absolutely complete nonsense. But again, this is not the first time that we have seen these strategies deployed disingenuously against people who are in fact not anti-Semitic in any way, shape, or form, which another point that kind of needs to be made in this situation is that not only is it not anti-Semitic to have critiques that are valid against a government like the state of Israel, but it also is like more anti-Semitic to conflate these two things, because what you're basically trying to imply is that the Jewish people as a whole are a monolith, that they all inherently support every single action that is taken by the government of Israel, and if they have anything to say about it, then they're inherently anti-Semitic. And this even goes for Jewish people, okay? Alan Dershowitz called Bernie Sanders, this is just earlier this year, okay, while Israel was doing this ongoing Operation Guardian of the Walls, where they were bombing the Gaza Strip. This was all the way back in May, but he had to say, calls Bernie Sanders an anti-Semite for his comments on Israel, basically just critiquing war crimes, okay? That's what Bernie Sanders was doing back earlier in May of 2021, and he calls him anti-Semitic. So again, it's completely ridiculous at face value on the substance of it, but also Bernie Sanders, his family is fucking Jewish, okay? You're literally calling a Jewish man who would have been the first Jewish president of the United States if he didn't get stabbed in the back. You're talking about a Jewish guy, okay? And saying that he is anti-Semitic for having a critique of the government of Israel. Again, they're two completely separate things. One is a government, one is a state, and the other is an ethnicity and a religion, okay? They're completely separate things, okay? If you criticize the government of Israel, it doesn't mean you're criticizing all Jewish people. And how do I know that? Well, for starters, clearly, we have a substantial portion of the Jewish population, especially here in the United States, that does have valid critiques of the actions of the government of Israel. So it's absolutely wild that this is something that is continuously deployed as some sort of a defense for every single action that they take, as if they can't make any mistakes as a government, as a state, as a military. It's absolutely wild to see it. But the real reason why they're doing this is not because they care about addressing anti-Semitism, which is a very real global issue. It has been obviously for centuries now. The Jewish people have been one of the most oppressed groups in history, but they're actually detracting from real accusations and real situations that do involve real anti-Semitism. You're detracting from that. You are watering down that salient criticism of anti-Semitic people when you just conflate everything. When you just say even the mildest critique of the government of Israel is anti-Semitic, then you're watering down what the word anti-Semitic even means in the first place. So I think that in and of itself is actually more anti-Semitic than the alternative and having valid critiques of the government. But this is what they're trying to distract from here, okay? So 2021 was the deadliest year for Palestinians since 2014 Israeli human rights groups. So 2021, they killed over 300 people in occupied territories and left nearly 900 homeless. That was just in 2021. And a lot of this came from, again, that bombing of the Gaza Strip that we saw all the way back in May, where they killed men, women, and children, innocent children. Literally dozens of children were killed in that bombing campaign. And if you have a critique of that, the state of Israel and their official government representatives to the fucking United Nations are going to turn around and say that you are anti-Semitic or that you are against the Jewish people for literally just pointing out war crimes, okay? It's absolutely ridiculous. But this wasn't the only thing. Not only did they kill innocent men, women, and children, innocent civilians in a very rampant way, but also they did shit like this, okay? They blew up the goddamn AP building as they were trying to cover the ongoing assault in Gaza, okay? And of course, AP, being the cucked center-right publication that they are, they immediately after this happened turned around and started like basically accepting the IDF's word when they came out and said, oh, something Hamas was in the area, I guess, so we had a right to bomb your journalist building. I mean, it's completely wild, okay? But this is the type of actions that they were taking back in May, and on top of that, that, on top of the war crimes, on top of the blowing up journalistic outlets' buildings, on top of that, Israel is accused of apartheid by many human rights groups around the world. Okay, they have apartheid policies that especially people in Palestinians in the West Bank are facing right now. We are seeing this play out in Sheikh Jarrah, in a neighborhood in East Jerusalem, which is illegally occupied by the government of Israel, by their security and police forces. And you have innocent people like Mohammed El Kurd is a great one. He's a great follow on Twitter, and he talks about Palestinian liberation on a regular basis. But his family is being kicked out of their homes forcefully by Israel's security forces. They are being forced out of their homes to basically be replaced by Israeli settlers. Okay, so this is what we're witnessing right now. We have an apartheid, we have ongoing war crimes, we have an actively ongoing displacement of the Palestinian people, especially in the West Bank. We have the Gaza Strip, which is effectively, as it is well known and called, the world's largest open air prison, and that's because, you basically have this tiny strip of land, which is the Gaza Strip, and they're blocked off by water, they're blocked off by land. There's nowhere for people who live in Gaza to go. There are millions of people who live in the Gaza Strip, and it's this tiny strip of land, and they're packed in there. They have Israel has complete control over their water access, has basically complete control over all of the supplies and resources that get in there. They have control over what these people can build, the types of jobs they have access to, the type of healthcare that they have access to, etc. So it's the world's largest open air prison. It's called that for a reason. And on top of that, not only are they restricting access to a bunch of supplies, but they are literally bombing the Gaza Strip and killing innocent men, women, and children. Okay, so it's just this is the actual reality of the on-the-ground situation that is still happening over in Israel and the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and Palestinian territories. Okay, we have war crimes, we have an apartheid, we have ongoing displacement of people from their homes. Okay, this is the reality of the situation on the ground, and because that is the reality of the situation on the ground, the government of Israel, their politicians, their various representatives, which also you have to keep in mind, okay, the government of Israel is extremely far right. Their current prime minister is an absolute psychopath. I guarantee if you go and look up some of his former quotes where he talks about Palestinians, it is like literal psychopathic shit, okay? They are to the right of even somebody like Donald Trump, okay? They're like to the right of even somebody like George W. Bush, arguably, okay? So it's a very far right government, but the reason why they want to distract from the reality of the situation on the ground, of the crimes that they are committing, the crimes against humanity that they are guilty from, that's when they troll out these arguments and these accusations of anti-Semitism. They're trying to make it a shield for themselves so that they are not subjected to any valid criticisms, and we literally just can't allow that to happen. Okay, so keep speaking out. Obviously they are very thin-skinned, and they are terrified of any real critiques of what is happening in Israel. And so this is why we have to keep speaking out on this, because it is the United States, and I say this as an American citizen, this is why it's somewhat on our shoulders to address this situation on a regular basis. We give them the military support, the logistical support, the financial support to continue doing these crimes, to continue the crimes of apartheid, to continue the war crimes. We are the ones who are largely funding and supporting them with basically no accountability whatsoever. Okay, so you got to keep speaking out on behalf of it. Credit to Emma Watson for putting her neck out there, and she's Emma Watson, so I'm sure she's not going to be fazed by this, but that's what everybody has to be doing, as she said in that post, and she was absolutely based and correct. Solidarity is a verb, so take action.